Greetings, I am Brother Judah from the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party, and I would like to welcome all who take time out to listen to us again to the NMP Vanguard News. Here we discuss religion, politics, history, and what is happening presently and also trajectories for the future. I would like to welcome you all who's taking time to listen. I want to investigate a topic concerning homelessness. All homelessness is a problem, no matter what ethnicity, but some ethnicities are disproportionately affected, and we want to look at the Black American and seeing that they make up roughly 12 to 13% of the population. They, according to stats, appear to make up 32 to 40% of the homeless population. We want to look at this a bit. And actually, the remedy for the so-called African American or the so-called Black American is actually the remedy for other ethnicities and peoples who's going through the same plight. So let's get into this a bit. Let's do some investigating and let's identify a possible culprit for this monstrosity. Bear with me a moment, please. One moment. Now, we want to investigate and look at the modern stats of the so-called Black Americans and their homeless dilemma, the homelessness dilemma. Now, this is an example of what I mean when you, those who may listen to our teachings, we have other teachings on a YouTube page, Knesset Yeshua, and also the NMP or the Nazarene Messianic page. We're going to look at a couple of news clips or a couple of videos, and we will have the links in the description box. But us starting off dealing with this, or should I say entering back in to rebuild on this YouTube channel, we begin to deal with the so-called problem of immigration. Now, what I want you to do is juxtapose the immigrants with the so-called natives or the citizens in the United States and understand why they may be at one another's throat. Again, we argue where if there is a threat for a person's survival, a threat for their necessities, their food, shelter, and clothing, then all of a sudden, your fellow human being becomes your enemy. This natural tendency for survival is weaponized against peoples. And in order for us to get out of this precarious situation, we must understand thoroughly what's causing the issue. So we're going to look at a couple of news clips, but I also want to point out some things to you here so we can put this in perspective. If we go to the Housing Up web page, it says in their write-up, homelessness rose by 18% from 2023 to 2024. Now I want to skip down to the last, or should I say the second paragraph. It says, as homelessness increased in the past year, families and children saw some of the most significant spikes. Family homelessness rose by 39% from the previous year, amounting to about 259,000 people in families experiencing homelessness. This is a high watermark in family homelessness since data collection started in 2007. Similarly, child homelessness increased by 33%, with nearly 150,000 children living unsheltered. Demographic data collected also reveals significant racial disparities in homelessness. Despite comprising only 12% of the population, Black individuals accounted for 32% of people experiencing homelessness in the U.S. So this is the 2023-2024. And this is what the stats gather. And let's look at stats from 2020. And so we could sort of probably find this happy medium where it looks like it's 33% or 32%. It could be higher, but this is what's recorded. But also, it's probably higher than 32% because it's possibly not likely that this other stat from 2020 really is describing or giving us some type of information to allude to the fact that maybe homelessness among African Americans have improved. So when we look at this other stat from 2020, we're going to look at different numbers. But this number could reveal, the 32% could reveal just an increase in homelessness among other ethnicities. Not necessarily that anything have improved much for the minority, more specifically the African American. Now, if we go to this website here, racial inequalities and homelessness by the numbers. And excuse me, I'll look to see if I can put this in the description box, but I did not put down the web host or the web page, the organization who actually owns this web page. So bear with me. I'll put that up. But here, I just want to look at their stats. What we find, it says, and this is from 2020, most minority groups in the United States experience homelessness at higher rates than whites, and therefore make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population. African Americans make up 13% of the general population, but more than 40% of the homeless population. So in 2020, as we see June 1st, 2020, it was more than 40%. So what probably has happened is an increase in homelessness among other ethnicities, which relatively dropped the African American homelessness rate down from 40 or over 40 down to 32. But even if it's 32, making up only 13% of the population, but gathering the data, they seem to be climbing to almost half of the homeless population. And that is a problem. So it's other stats we want to show you, but let's look at something here that's going on in Atlanta. Now, just for what we have just finished viewing, put this in context now of why it is hostility between the U.S. citizens and also illegal immigrants who's coming in and getting benefits. And those who sit in seats of power understand this dynamic. Is there something that can be done? Absolutely. And in the future, we want to present or suggest action, modes of action. But first, to assess the problem. So if you have those in the second and third world country or from the colonies who's coming over to America because it's the breadbasket and they're looking for a better quality of life, but yet here in America, you also have homelessness, deprivation, poverty. And so therefore, what will happen is an hostility between the two forces of those who are impoverished. It was an experiment done back in the 1940s with rats, and they were dealing with behavior in a lab. And they had many experiments. It was very interesting, dealing with the study of behavior. And they had a rat inside of a cage with a low current, a low electrical current. But it caused uncomfortability for that rat, and the rat would just it stayed dormant or paused in the cage. It did not move. It just buckled down in the cage because of the light current going through the cage. Then they introduced a second rat. And so when they introduced the second rat into the cage, then the rat that was already there attacked the rat that came in. And they began to understand, among many other things, how our environments affect our behavior. Well, when this rat came in, whatever anxiety this other rat was experiencing, obviously, he expressed hostility towards the new rat that entered into the cage. And under stressful, uncomfortable conditions, you will find that the human being will react the same way. Needless to say, that the rat who was already in the cage, the source of his uncomfortability did not come from the new rat introduced. He did not know where the source was coming from. Only thing he experienced was uncomfortability. Excuse me. That's the only thing that he could relate to. And this uncomfort or discomfort that we experience in our communities, we don't know why, but hostility is expressed towards one another. So what we're arguing is we must come to the source. We must learn the source of the issue and the problem. Okay? That is of the utmost importance for us to settle our issues today. Now, this is Atlanta, and we want to continue to look at...
Welcome to Street Stories Homeless.
This is Street Stories Homeless, where we dig deep into the raw, untold stories pulsing beneath America's cities. Atlanta, a radiant hub of culture and ambition, sparkles with landmarks like the Georgia Aquarium, hosting over 2.5 million visitors annually. But brace yourself while the city pours nearly $1 billion yearly into tackling homelessness. Thousands still sleep under its bridges. Stunningly, along the 1.8-mile corridor of Ponce de Leon Avenue, where 15,000 cars speed by daily, makeshift tents and worn blankets reveal lives forgotten by the city's glow. How can a place so vibrant leave so many in the dark? Join Street Stories Homeless as we unravel Atlanta's hidden crisis, exposing truths that will grip your heart and spark curiosity. the hidden heart of Atlanta. Atlanta is a city of contrasts where progress and struggle exist side by side. By day, its streets are alive with activity. Tourists flock to the Georgia state capitol, a historic site hosting 250,000 visitors annually, while professionals fill the offices of the 61-story SunTrust Plaza. But as night falls, a different scene emerges. On North Avenue, where 150 businesses thrive, individuals set up tents in alleyways or rest on sidewalks, their lives blending into the city's background. These people are as much a part of Atlanta as its landmarks. Yet their challenges are often ignored, overshadowed by the city's bright exterior. Meet Marcus, a 52-year-old Gulf War veteran who once had a stable job and a home, after losing everything to mounting medical costs. He now resides in a small tent near Grant Park, a 131-acre green space that sees 2 million visitors yearly. With only a tattered sleeping bag and a cherished photo of his daughter, Marcus clings to hope, his story a powerful reminder of the strength found in those society overlooks. His journey is one of many, each a vital piece of Street Stories Homeless. At Street Stories Homeless, we're committed to amplifying these voices. Over 3,000 people experience homelessness in Atlanta, with nearly 1,000 living without shelter. They're men, women, children, seniors, and even full-time workers unable to afford rising rents. Why do so many fade into the background of a thriving city? These stories deserve to be heard, and we're here to tell them. A message from Street Stories Homeless: every individual on these streets carries a story worth sharing. Let's see their humanity and work toward a city that embraces all. As we dive deeper into this crisis, let's explore the places where it's most visible, where hardship shapes the daily landscape. What does it mean to walk past someone's struggle without truly seeing them? Hey, if these stories touch your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Street Stories Homeless to help us share more voices from the
And the link to this video is in the description box. We're going to just look at just a bit more, and we have to analyze this. You hear him arguing about the rise in the cost of rent. You can see this across the nation, in fact, across the globe. The income of the wage labor or the wage slave isn't keeping up with the rise in the cost of living. And so these are other discussions that we must have, because if you're not aware of how the ruling class works, then you're bound to be a victim here. So we're going to address this, and this is the other side where, yes, you have immigrants coming in, and now you have all of these poor people who's being exploited and plundered by the same class of people. So it's important for us to look at both sides so we can understand. So let's get back to that, what's happening in Atlanta, and just a little bit more, and I want to show you another clip.
2. Crisis Zones of Atlanta. In the heart of downtown Atlanta, around 5 Points, a transit hub serving over 100,000 riders monthly, homelessness is woven into the cityscape. Here, people sleep on benches or stand on corners, asking for food or spare change. The sidewalks act as a dividing line, separating those with homes from those without. Areas like Edgewood Avenue, with its 1.5 miles of vibrant nightlife, and Memorial Drive, stretching 3.2 miles along historic routes, have become focal points for homeless encampments. These small communities form out of necessity, offering solidarity and protection in an uncertain world. The Peachtree Pine Shelter, once Atlanta's largest, housed thousands before its closure in 2017. Located at 477 Peach Street, it was a beacon of hope, but also a lightning rod for controversy, seen by some as an eyesore. Its closure didn't solve the crisis, it merely shifted it to new corners. Today, small encampments dot the city, fragile and vulnerable to sudden sweeps by authorities. Have you ever walked past someone on the street and wondered about their story? These are real people, not just passersby, each with a life shaped by hardship. A message from Street Stories Homeless: a city's true strength lies in how it uplifts its most vulnerable. Let's build communities that include everyone, not just those who can afford it.
All right, so you can watch the entire video in your own time, but he's making some comments here about communities being built for everyone and not for just people with the money. Now, you have to consider something. How is it that the human race have developed a society or civilization in which human rights can only be given at a cost? And for us to adopt that and even acknowledge it as a norm is a problem, psychological problem, borderline insanity. So we are in this false reality where the human right can only be given or obtained if you have money. Now let's put this again in perspective. Now we're looking at the African American population. 2020, they are 13% of the general population, but make up 40% of the homeless population. This was in 2020. 2023, 2024, this argued now that the African American population, comprising only 12% of the population, black individuals account for 32% of people experiencing homelessness in the U.S. Now that's still a problem. That is a big problem, especially when you look at the number of homeless in relation to the number of empty homes. You say, brother, what in the world are you talking about? Well, this is what I'm talking about here. If we go to Live Now, Fox News, this was June 17th, 2025. Here's how many homes are sitting vacant across the U.S. and where. So let's juxtapose this. We're going to look at the numbers of the homeless shortly. But we have vacant homes and homeless people. All right. How many vacant homes? It's estimated 14.9 million empty homes. Let's look at this, read this a little bit. Let's go down. The briefing. There are roughly 14.9 million vacant homes in the United States. Lending Tree data between 2022 and 2023 found the states with the most and least vacant homes. Maine topped the list, followed by Vermont and Alaska. So there are millions of homes that are sitting vacant in the United States, according to a new Lending Tree study. 14.9, almost 15 million to be exact. Now, we looked at the stats for the African American population, 13.9% U.S. population, 40 to 32% of the homeless population, approaching half. But it's 14.9 million vacant homes. Well, let's look at more numbers. How many homeless are there? Well, when we look at the numbers, Consumer Shield, it says number of homes in the U.S. trends, or number of homeless, in the U.S. trends and top states. So this is 2025. If you look at the graph from 2007, it's up in 2024. And we're presently in 2025. And if you look at the graph, you will see it's above 700,000 recorded homeless here in 2024, 2025. 700,000. Let's get the exact number here. How many are homeless in the US? Quick answer. 2024. More than 770,000 people were homeless in the US. An increase of over 118,000 from the year before. The rise is largely due to economic struggles and a lack of affordable housing. Why? Who's causing it? What policies are in place? It's important for us to understand these things. If you're going to change your position, and you must argue that those who sit in seats of power cannot be your friends. Obviously, profit is their friend before people. You can rightfully argue they're your enemies. Okay, and we're not talking about a white man. We're not talking about a black man. The ethnic divide is another strategy used by those who sit in seats of power to divide the people. We have 770,000 homeless. Well, how many empty houses are there? 14.9 million. So even if you had 1 million homeless or 2 million, there's more houses. There's plenty of houses to house every single recorded homeless person. Why aren't these houses available for the people? Because they're being charged for a human right. This, my friends, all of the apologists for capitalism. Here you have it. Here you have it. How is it that you have more than enough homes and people still on the street? Well, you know, they're druggies and all this other stuff. Not all of them. That leads into another argument. Why? What are they trying to escape? What exactly are they trying to escape? Another subject, right? Think about the numbers. 14.9 million vacant homes. Not even 1 million recorded homeless people, even if we started with that million, or let's say 2 million, because everyone isn't recorded. More homes empty than homeless. How would you fix the problem? What is the way to fix the problem? We're going to look at it, but let's look at this again. Let's look at this again.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Homelessness in America reached record high numbers earlier this year. A government report out today reveals that last January, the number of people experiencing homelessness shot up by 18% to roughly 770,000 as counted on a single night. The annual survey published by the Department of Housing and Urban Development pointed to a list of intensifying economic problems, rising housing costs, and the migrant influx in some cities among them. To understand more about what's behind this rise, I'm joined by Sean Donovan, CEO and President of Enterprise Community Partners and former Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Sean, this is an eye-popping report in many ways.
Now, those of you who looked at our last session where we had a clip of a brother who was explaining how in America, the American poverty would translate to him as opportunity because of the oppression that he suffered in his country, whether it's one of the second or third world colonies. Now, understand how this works. The more that the Democratic Party, the party which plays both sides of the fence all the time, they did it during the days of slavery. They promoted slavery, but yet they also welcomed in immigrants. So therefore, the slave was pitted against the immigrant, immigrant pitted against the slave, kept wages low, and they competed for labor, and they started to hate each other. All in the meanwhile, you have whites, Asians, blacks, slaves, indentured servants, and railroad workers, and everything else. While they all fighting each other for bread, the one that's holding the basket is always out of the scene. He's almost like a phantom, or they are almost like a phantom. And then you get this rhetoric. Oh, it's the white man. The black man is causing my issues. The Latino. No, that's not it at all. And we have to think about this intelligently, but first we have to gather the data to actually see what's actually happening. So if you get people from extreme poverty to come over from other countries, not only will it allow the census to gather more people in certain districts, which will allow the House of Representatives to add more seats, they can also get more votes. And so these people are going to come in and work cheaper, which will help the capitalists in the said Democratic or Republican Party. They will work cheaper. At the same time, it will be a divide and a division among the workers. And also those who are coming in, the influx of coming in, the Democratic Party, for example, might not use they might not skip a beat, because at the same time, they want these new immigrants to vote, which will keep them in power until the immigrant rise up and realize who caused this debt strangulation in their own countries, which is causing them to leave the borders to find opportunity elsewhere, and also who's causing the debt strangulation here in this country, and find that it's actually the same body, the same corporate, the class of capitalist owners. So in the meantime, they're benefiting from extreme poverty among the natives in the land, and also causing extreme poverty in the colonies, and then causing these people to immigrate, to come here, and you have a war, and they laugh all the way to the bank. And as long as the people are emotional and divided, they don't understand how the political scheme works. And so therefore, those who do sit in seats of power could remain in power, even though that the seats, for example, in America, the House of Representatives is only 2 years, and the senators are only 6, and they jog every 3 years. So I use the symbolic language. These seats are transient, meaning or should I say, those who sit in seats of power are transient. They're not settled there. It's not a born monarchy where your son will sit on the throne. You know, the people fought against that. They removed that. And now they have seats of power where those who sit is transient. They could be removed. And not after a long time either, 2 years, 6 years, right? But because the people are politically backwards, these people could sit in the seats for the next 20, 30 years. They sit in those seats and get rich. They formulate policies to divide people and to exploit and plunder people at home and abroad. These are the conversations that need to be had. Not throwing paper dollars at a problem. They print the dollars. They make them themselves. They could print as many as they want. And if they print too many, then they just raise the prices over the commodities in which they control. The people themselves, as long as we are in ignorance and unorganized, then we will always face the brunt of this brutality that isn't just here in the shores of this country, but also in other countries. And we can no longer just blame it on the government. We must understand the government, and then we will begin to recognize that a lot of the blame rests on us because we're allowing it to happen. It's time to recognize the power the people have to change these conditions, so we can stop being used and plundered and turned against each other, while those who do not have our best interests sit in seats of power. People need to read the Declaration of Independence again. Read it again. And God allow, we're going to be having sessions on it too. Just in case you don't read it, you can read it with us. So let's look at this again here. Homelessness. You got 14.9 million empty homes, and let's say 700,000 or 800,000, and let's even say 1 million homeless. There isn't a housing shortage. The problem is an injustice of the profit-driven parasites.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Homelessness in America reached record high numbers earlier this year. A government report out today reveals that last January, the number of people experiencing homelessness shot up by 18% to roughly 770,000 as counted on a single night. The annual survey published by the Department of Housing and Urban Development pointed to a list of intensifying economic problems, rising housing costs, and the migrant influx in some cities among them. To understand more about what's behind this rise, I'm joined by Sean Donovan, CEO and President of Enterprise Community Partners and former Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Sean, this is an eye-popping report in many ways. It's about where things stood earlier this year, and I want to start with one particular dynamic, the role of the migrant crisis. How and where did that affect homelessness in this country?
Well, Lisa, first of all, thank you for having me on. And it is tragic news. The largest increase we've ever seen in homelessness since we started recording these numbers. And specifically to your question, there's certainly no question that the rise in the number of migrant families in the U.S. did contribute to this, particularly in some of the places where we saw the biggest increases, places like New York City or Massachusetts, Chicago, Denver. But I think what's really stunning about these numbers is how broad the challenge is. We saw 18 states reach record levels, including places like Kansas, Alaska, Utah, places, Idaho is another one, places where there isn't a significant influx of migrants. And so there's a much bigger story here about record levels of housing costs, both for owning and renting, higher than somebody like me who's been doing this for a long time, for 30 years. I've never seen the affordable housing crisis this bad.
One thing that also stands out in this report is a particularly vulnerable population, kids. I want to look at some of the statistics that they found. First of all, they found for families and children, one of the largest increases in homelessness. Families, a 39% spike in 2024 from 2023. And on that January night that they surveyed, they found 150,000 children experiencing homelessness. And in shelters, the number of unaccompanied children has reached record numbers. Why is it that you think right now our nation's children are being disproportionately affected and seeing this rise in vulnerability to homelessness?
Well, Lisa, as you can imagine, as a parent myself, families will do everything possible to try to avoid ending up on the streets or in shelter. They'll move in with relatives. They'll do anything they can. And I think this 39% increase in families with children experiencing homelessness is the single most tragic part of the report. And I think it's really a reflection that increasingly in this country, you can hold down a full-time job or even in a couple, 2 full-time jobs and still not be able to afford housing. Estimates are that about half of all people experiencing homelessness are working. And so we have to recognize that this is a housing crisis that is affecting everyone in our society, but most acutely, those of our neighbors who end up sleeping on the streets or in shelter.
There are some real sirens in this report.
So what we have, but yet we're looking at the numbers. We look at the numbers, 14.9 million vacant homes. Let's talk about it. You want to talk about the homeless? Okay, well, we looked at the numbers. And so when we're looking at the numbers of the homeless, it's argued that they are the latest stats of those who are homeless is 770,000. Let's give them a million. Let's say 800K. But the same stats show that there's plenty of homes, more than enough. So we have a fundamental problem. Not with the white man, not with the Latino, not with the migrant, not with the so-called black people. We have a fundamental problem with the socioeconomic system in which we live under today. The socioeconomic system that is hardly ever addressed on the news. How many, and I know people may run away from it, but how many times on the news have you actually ever heard the word capitalism? How often on the news have anyone ever critiqued capitalism? Many people I run into don't even know what it is. They just think it's about making money. No, it's not. Critique it, learn it. But those other discussions we'll have hopefully in the future. 14.9 million, plenty of houses to house people. Let's look at one more.
Homelessness in America is at a record high, with more than 770,000 unhoused Americans in 2024. While the government doesn't track the number of unhoused who are working, shelter service agencies say that number is growing too.
Now look at it. So he's saying the people who are homeless and working, they're not even tracked. So this number could be doubled, 770. But even if it's doubled, there's still plenty of homes. Plenty. But you can't move in because you don't have enough trading tickets they call dollars. Is that a crime? How is it that we're so lost that we don't really understand the fundamentals of human rights?
Homelessness in America is at a record high, with more than 770,000 unhoused Americans in 2024. While the government doesn't track the number of unhoused who are working, shelter service agencies say that number is growing too. It's a symptom of what's being called the affordability crisis. For tonight's interview, we turn to author Brian Goldstone, who has a new book, and it's called There Is No Place for Us: Working and Homeless in America. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. Can we start with you? You write that the term working homeless seems like an oxymoron. Tell us who would fit in that category and why it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, so in America today, across the country, a low-wage job is homelessness waiting to happen. The number of people who fit that description, working homeless, that is not like a tiny number. That's not a marginal phenomenon. A growing portion of the low-wage workforce is either at immediate risk of falling into homelessness or is already experiencing homelessness. And you mentioned that official number of people experiencing homelessness in America, around 770,000, which is the highest number on record. But by cobbling together different data sources, what I've been able to find is that the actual number is roughly 6 times that amount. And a huge portion of that number of people experiencing homelessness are people with jobs.
You have a start.
He said the number, according to his estimation, is 6 times that. Let's just throw a number. Let's say it's 7 million. It's still 14.9 or 15 million empty homes. So even if you escalate that number, there's still plenty of homes for people. What kind of society must be built to make sure everyone receives a human right? You see, that is what we must think about. And I tell you again, and I say it over and over again, people better go back and read and study the fundamentals of this country, the United States of America. Study the Constitution. Study the Declaration of Independence. Learn that the people do not have to put up with this madness. Let's stop being entertained with the games. That's what the Romans used to do, to stop people from revolting. And the way that the United States government is set up, you don't even need a gun. You don't need armed revolt. That is the amazing thing about how this government have been set up and the struggles in the times past. Since the days of the 1776, their struggle to break away from monarchy, and how at first the government was just only still restricted to moneyed white men. But the people kept fighting until now everybody, man, women got their rights even later. Everyone have access to political power. That is dangerous. So you got to be distracted. You have to be distracted, and they want to confuse you in the world of politics. You must understand how politics work and see that these people who sit in seats of power, they're not that smart. And also, they're walking right in office to make these decisions for us. What minimum wages are, what kind of food is supplied, what kind of poisons, pesticides, or adulteration can be on the foods, how the prices of housing is set. This stuff don't fall out the sky. This stuff happens right in the world of politics. We must understand how it works because we see the problem isn't improving. Rich men getting richer, but yet the citizens are suffering. Bear with me.
Startling statistic in the book. It says today there isn't a single state, metropolitan area, or county in the United States where a full-time worker earning the local minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Give me a sense of some of the jobs that we're talking about here that people have who are working homeless.
Yeah, we're talking about people who are working at McDonald's, who are working at Walmart, who are packing boxes for Amazon, who are doing airport runs for Uber and Lyft. And when they finish their shifts, they're returning not to an apartment, but in many cases, they're sleeping in the very car that they just did that airport run in. Or it's a family that when the mom gets off work at Walmart, they're going to a shelter, or they're doubling up with others, or increasingly, they're going to these squalid extended stay hotel rooms.
You focused on Atlanta. Why there? And is Atlanta idiosyncratic or representative of larger trends?
In one way, Atlanta is special. Atlanta was the first city in America during the 1930s to build public housing. And during the 90s and 2000s, Atlanta was actually the first city in America to demolish all of its public housing. So in a way, you could sort of tell the story of housing policy in this country just through Atlanta's own trajectory. But the reason the book is based in Atlanta is more because of how representative it is. You know, over the last decade or so, Atlanta has undergone this dramatic renaissance, this much celebrated transformation of its urban core. And that is a trend that we're seeing across the country. We're seeing, unemployment at a record low. We're seeing the economy in these cities booming, and we're also seeing the very people who power those economies, the very people doing the jobs that make our cities run. They are increasingly not just getting pushed out of their neighborhoods, but they're being pushed out of stable housing altogether.
So 20 seconds left, Brian. Is that why you say families are not falling into homelessness, they're being pushed?
Absolutely. Homelessness in this country is a policy choice. That's a choice that we as a society have made. And it also means that we have a choice to stop this devastating trend.
Brian Goldstone, the book is There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America. Thank you so much.
As Brian said, it is a policy issue. So we ask you, to tune into more of our discussions. Again, we're working to build this channel. So I have been told that if people like the videos, it can go up the algorithms or whatever. But if it's something that you're interested in, it's a way that you can reach us to discuss alternatives or solutions for the issue. And I'll close with this. This is the housing question by Friedrich Engels. It says the so-called housing shortage, which plays such a great role in the press nowadays, doesn't. And this is the record I'm reading from right now. The document I'm reading from right now is from 1872 to 1873. So back in the 1870s, there was also an issue called the housing shortage or the housing problem. It literally wasn't a shortage. And this is what he explains. But I just want to read a quick excerpt from here. He said the so-called housing shortage, which plays such a great role in the press nowadays, does not consist in the fact that the working class generally lives in bad, overcrowded, and unhealthy dwellings. This shortage is not something peculiar to the present. It is not even one of the sufferings peculiar to the modern proletariat in this contradistinction to all other oppressed classes. On the contrary, all oppressed classes in all periods suffered more or less uniformly from it. In order to make an end of this housing shortage, quote unquote, there is only one means: to abolish altogether the exploitation and oppression of the working class by the ruling class. Period. The exploitation, the servitude that they call us now employees. Law's Black Dictionary, if you look it up, edition, the 6th edition, you'll find it in the others, but in particular in the 6th edition, if you look up servant, you're going to find employee. If you look up master, it's going to give you the synonym of employer. So now we sell ourselves. And we, as a working class of people, laboring class, or as Adam Smith said, the servant race. And he meant white, black, indigenous, Latinos, Asians, all of the laborers, the early or older economists called the servant race. And they are in subjection to the master race. This is Adam Smith, Wealth of the Nations. So the master race isn't just this white man or the black man. No, it is all those who sit in the seats of power from here to Asia, who hoard the resources and sell them back to us without regard to our basic human rights if it doesn't make a profit. I'm Brother Judah from the Nazarene Messianic Party, the NMP Vanguard News Channel. We like to greet you to that. If you have been listening to us, we hope that you could return again or possibly subscribe to help us hopefully get more information out, and also to not just get information out, but also to connect and to network and to build a group of people who are disciplined and educated, working class people. We must take a stand because we don't have any representatives. The working class people does not have representatives. Even many of the unions have sold the people out. We must gain footing again. Okay. And it's not going to happen by us just on the sideline arguing and cussing people out. This is going to take education. It's going to take organization. And if you want to contribute or learn more, contact us with the information that have been appearing on the screen. And with that, I'm going to close out for today's session. Hopefully we could return again with more discussions and also presenting solutions. With that, thank you for your time. And hopefully we will meet again. And all of you who are searching for a better way for humanity, we bid you peace.